Hi, this is Lindsay, one of the co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello, and happy Tuesday, or whatever day it is that you are listening to this. Welcome, and thank you for joining the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast. My name is Jenna, and I am your host. I am a military spouse of 10 years, a mom, and a certified and registered dental assistant. And again, I want to thank you for being here with me today. And if you find that today's episode either resonates with you or you know someone else that could benefit from hearing today's episode, I highly encourage you to share it. Also, I love and appreciate any and all feedback. So if you would like to leave me some feedback, feel free to email me at confessionsofamilspouse@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook at Confessions of a Military Spouse or on Instagram at Confessions of a Milspouse. So as you may or may not know, I was recently left a negative review, which surprisingly has been my first public one to my knowledge. And why do I say surprisingly? Well, because when I started this podcast, or when I decided to start this podcast, I knew I could receive some backlash from it. And I mean, I was opening up and talking about things that weren't really spoken about and not necessarily focusing on the good things about being a military spouse, but also not trying to focus on the quote unquote bad things about being a military spouse. But just the struggles that we as military spouses face. So, with that being said, I want to talk about what I like to call the silver lining of being a military spouse. And the end. I'm just kidding. Although there are some days that people tell me how great it must be to be a military spouse. And on those days, that's really how I feel. But when I sit back and think about the perks of being a military spouse, I realize how truly blessed we can be. I mean, let's think about this. What other job can you or your spouse do that will pay for you to basically travel the world every 2 to 3 years? I'm sure that there are some out there, but let's be honest, they're probably few and far between. And while yes, moving every 2 to 3 years does suck because of everything you're leaving behind, it also gives you so many opportunities. Opportunity to start over, to start fresh, and almost create a whole new life. If anybody has ever watched the show You on Netflix, when I was writing this, that's kind of what I was thinking about. If you haven't seen the show, go watch it. You're welcome. And just make sure you have plenty of time. But anyway, remember that job that you were working at your last duty station that you hated, but you had to stay because you needed the money in order to quote unquote survive? Guess what? Now it's PCS time, and you have the opportunity to readjust your budget by maybe downsizing the house you're in. Or maybe the cost of living is just less, or maybe you're able to sell a car. So now with all of these changes, maybe you can stay home with the kids or go back to school or take that leap of faith and open your own business. I mean, when you really sit back and think about it, it's pretty amazing that we're given an opportunity to start over every 2 to 3 years. But then, if we're lucky, every once in a while, we get the opportunity to go back to a place we've been before. And why is that lucky? Well, maybe there were a few things you wanted to do but never got the chance. Or maybe you've kind of watched, your friends or fellow military spouses from afar, and you've seen all of the cool things you could have done while you were there, but you didn't know about it. And now you do. Or maybe you're just a completely different person than you were when you were there before. And now you have the opportunity to explore this place again, but in a completely different way. I know that was definitely the case for me whenever I left San Diego and came back. I didn't really have the friends the first time, and I really didn't do much the first time that I was there. But then I was given the chance to go back, and it was a completely different and even better experience because I was a completely different person. And while we're on that topic, I think that we as spouses are extremely lucky and fortunate in the fact that we get to move so often, and all of the places that we can go is amazing. I mean, we can go to Spain, Germany, Japan, Hawaii, pretty much anywhere in the US. And not only that, the duty stations we get to experience can be super cool as well. So, for example, my husband was a recruiter for 3 years. And he recruited out of St. Louis, Missouri. And while recruiting duty itself is definitely not for the weak, and it sucked way more than it was awesome, it's still not something that my husband or myself take for granted, and here's why. I met 2 of my very best friends while on recruiting duty because I worked as well as my husband. We also had our daughter while we were in recruiting duty. I mean, how amazing is that? And we were the closest to home that we've ever been while he was on recruiting duty, which was extremely nice having a newborn baby while he was working crazy hours. And my husband got to experience some of the coolest things ever while on recruiting duty, like doing color guard for the 2013 World Series at Busch Stadium. I mean, what? He also, by doing that, got to meet a lot of the players and experience the game from a totally different perspective than anyone else. He got to attend football games, hockey games, Mardi Gras parades, all sorts of super fun and amazing, like once in a lifetime things he would have never gotten to do had it not been for the fact that he was on recruiting duty. Now, let's talk about TRICARE. I will be talking mostly about TRICARE Prime because that's what I've had my entire time of being a military wife. But I know there is so much negative that surrounds TRICARE, and I will be one of the first ones to say that. I mean, I'm just going to be honest about it. TRICARE is a whole entire beast of itself, and I haven't always had the greatest experiences with them, and my most recent experience with TRICARE actually left me in tears, which is something I will eventually talk about because it's definitely something that needs to be talked about, but just not today. Anyway, I understand that things with TRICARE can be frustrating and they're not always the best. They say that they will do and cover things when in all actuality they won't. But the fact that I know I can go to my doctor, urgent care, or any ER without having a copay has been amazing. And to be honest, I think it's something that I probably take for granted. For the last 10 years, I've been able to go to the doctor, specialists, urgent cares, ERs, myself, my daughter, without having to pay a single dime. When I had my daughter, I didn't pay a single thing. And I don't know if anybody in here has, non-military family members that they have seen what it costs to have a baby, but it is just ridiculous. And for that in itself, I am very thankful of TRICARE. And given the fact that I have autoimmune conditions and it took me a long time and a lot of doctors to figure out what exactly was going on, I could literally only imagine the amount of money I would have been paying in copays, deductibles, etc. had it not been for TRICARE Prime. So while you do have to take the good with the bad, I have to keep in mind just how lucky I am to have the insurance and resources I have. And I have to remember that with some work and persistency, you can usually get what you need from TRICARE. Another silver lining in being a military spouse is the educational opportunities we have as spouses. Now, let me just say this because this is something, to be honest, I have struggled with as a military spouse almost my entire time as being a military spouse. I have wanted to go back to school for a really long time, and specifically to be a nurse and get my RN degree, and probably even my BSN. But if you're going for your BSN, which is your bachelor's degree, how the heck do you get a 4-year degree when you are only in a certain place for 2 to 3 years? Well, I have finally learned the answer to that. And the answer to that is baby steps. Pretty much anywhere we go as military spouses, we have some sort of educational opportunities available to us. Whether it's college courses, certificate courses, trade schools, whatever the situation is, we have those resources available to us. The other thing that we have available as spouses is, if our spouse chooses to do so, is our spouse's GI Bill, if they transfer it to us. We have My CAA, which is available, for certain spouses whose husbands are within certain ranks and stuff like that. And to be honest, FAFSA is usually available. And there are also, what I've found, all kinds of grants and, all kinds of scholarships and grants and everything else that are available to military spouses. The other thing that I struggled with was, how the heck was I going to go back to school and be able to go back to school full time? Because there was no way I could work, obviously, full time and go to school for nursing. But I definitely needed to work because we needed the income. So again, baby steps. So the plan that I have devised is that I will continue to work full time, for one reason, because I actually love my job, which may make you question why I want to switch. But it's one of those things, as a dental assistant, I really can't progress anymore. And my passion for helping people is there, and nursing is something that I've always wanted to do and goes along those lines of helping people. So that's why I have decided that it's something that I want to do. So I will continue to work full time, and I will take 1 to 2 classes a semester in the evening while we're here in Beaufort. I have a lot of general education that I need to get out of the way before I can even go into a nursing program, which kind of works out perfectly because I can take these general educations in the evenings while still working full time. And then whenever we leave Beaufort, because I will have continued to work full time and go to school in the evenings, we will financially be in a much better place. And I will have, if not all, most of my general education courses out of the way. So then whenever we move, I can go straight into a nursing program. It definitely takes a lot of planning, and it's definitely going to take some sacrifices for sure. But I feel like what I've learned is that as long as you have a plan, it's definitely doable. And it's such an amazing opportunity that we as spouses can take advantage of. Next, I want to talk about opportunities for our children. I feel like there's a lot of things we can find a silver lining with when it comes to our children. I won't negate the fact, though, that it downright sucks that we have to pick up and move them every 2 to 3 years. But here's what I think is so great about that as well. For one, we're teaching our children resiliency and how to adapt and overcome situations that may not be ideal. We are teaching them real life skills. I mean, real life skills that they're going to need. And the other things that I find amazing about this is that it gives them the opportunity to see and experience diversity. They're learning that not everyone is like them, and it teaches them how to understand that, which is also another great life skill to have. They also get the opportunities to learn about different cultures. I'm just going to tell you guys, living in Beaufort, I did not realize South Carolina was considered the South. Guess I'm a little naive. But anyway, living in Beaufort, my daughter just learned about racism in school, which when she first told me, I mean, immediately I was like, oh my gosh, because you don't really know what they're teaching them. But let me just tell you, what she told me made me be like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You know, she went on to tell me that she was so glad that racism didn't exist anymore. So she clearly has some of her innocence left, but she still learned the concept of it. And I think that is such an amazing thing. You know, when you go to Japan, kids get to learn about the Japanese culture. They get to learn, you know, how to speak a different language, which is something, if they're old enough, that they will remember for a lifetime. Military kids also get the opportunity to meet other military kids that are going through or have experienced the exact same things that they're going through. And I think it gives them an opportunity to bond with those other military kids in a way they might not have bonded with other kids, because being a military kid is definitely something special. And another thing that I think is so amazing for our military kids are the sports opportunities. Every place you go, there's going to be different sports available to them, and probably different sports that are bigger or more well known wherever you are. And there's, you know, might also be sports that they may not have had an opportunity to try or do while at a previous duty station, or they can continue on with a sport or extracurricular activity that they've been participating in, but this time they get to meet new people, maybe do new things that they haven't learned at their previous duty station. All kinds of amazing things. So, like I said, while there are a lot of things that suck when it comes to moving our children, there's also a lot of things that we can be thankful for and find a silver lining in. And lastly, one of my most favorite things about being a military spouse is PCSing, and probably not for the reasons you may think. I know I briefly, talked about it earlier on in this podcast, but here's what I really love about PCSing. I love that every 3 years, I learn how much junk I have collected in 3 years. I love that it gives me an opportunity to go through and get rid of all that said junk, though. It's like a spring cleaning, but every 3 years. So I've definitely seen it referred to as a PCS cleaning, and all my military spouses know exactly what I'm talking about. The other thing that I love with PCSing is that it gives me an opportunity to decorate a new way exactly how I want. I get to rearrange my furniture primarily to figure out how it will all fit into our new home, but nonetheless, I get to rearrange the furniture. I can redecorate however I want. I can have a new theme, quote unquote, if I want. I can literally do almost whatever I want to my new house. And I say almost because those of you that live in base housing know it's really hard to paint the walls. But it's literally like a blank canvas every, 2 to 3 years, which, I mean, how amazing is that? And finally, one of my least and most favorite things about having to PCS is being able to make new friends. I obviously hate moving away from my friends, but it's also fun to be able to meet new people and make new friends. Like my new neighbor who has an awesome macaron shop. If you haven't heard about it, go check out Toot Sweet Macarons, spelled TOUT. SWEET, and she did not plot me to put this in. They really are amazing and super delicious, but Shannon's also a super amazing person and welcomed me into the neighborhood knowing that I was a military spouse, which was so nice. And they've been to some really fun duty stations, which I always find super intriguing to hear other spouses' stories about their experiences and where they've been. And, she's got a shot glass collection, and we took it down one night and she was just telling me, this came from here and that came from there and all of the memories attached to it, which I find super, super amazing. And it also helps that they have kids around the same age as mine who get along really, really well. So like I said, I hate leaving my old friends behind, and, they will forever be my friends, but I also find it super, super fun and super amazing to have the opportunity to meet all of the people that I've been able to meet in the last 10 years. So, like I've said, there are a lot of things that are not the greatest about being a military spouse, but if you really look for it, there's usually a silver lining in almost every situation. I know it can be hard to find the good in things, sometimes, because when the times are hard and it seems like nothing is going right, just remember that it is totally okay to feel that way. Let yourself have those feelings. Just don't unpack and stay there. There is always a silver lining, even if some days we have to look harder than others. Thank you for being here with me today, and remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform so you never miss an episode.